Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here on my next Airspeed's Korra Rewatch video. This one's going to be for K109 Out of the Past. And yeah, we've got another very good episode. I think not quite as good as some of the episodes that surround it, but it has big moments, it has those shocking moments that I talked about in the last episode. And it is still a very, I think, notable episode from the book, and it just really speaks to, I think, how overall strong Korra Book 1 actually is, because, like, you look at the last couple of episodes, and look at the episodes that are still to come, it's a great run of episodes. 6 as the mid-season finale was great, episode 7 is very notable, 8 is definitely, I think, a fan favourite, it's a really good episode. This one, I think, maybe slightly below them, but it still has its big moments, so it's a very notable episode with the flashbacks, the Amon reveal, and so on, the Yukon stuff. 10 is a great episode, 11 is a good episode. 12, of course, there's some problems with, but it's still an okay episode. And then even then you bring in the earlier episodes from the season, and it's kind of like, okay, 5's a little weaker than the other episodes, maybe 2's a little bit weaker as well. But that's still, like, from a 12-episode season, only, like, 2, maybe 3 of the episodes are kind of maybe a little bit of a drop compared to the other ones. Other than that, the quality is super high. Episode 1 is a really good first episode. The Revolution, episode 3, introduction of Amon, very good stuff. Episode 4, very emotional arc for Korra, and then I already talked about the other ones. But this one, I think obviously you remember it because it's when we finally get the details on the flashback. We finally get to see, like, the older ATLA cast talk. Korra gets her vision, she communicates with Aang, I suppose, finally. And then I think you also remember this episode for Amon's kind of stunning surprise appearance and getting that victory over Tarlok, and how shocking that is. I think what you tend to forget about with this episode is that this is the episode where they search for Korra, and they go into, like, the Equalist base, and they have a fight scene. They get Lynn's kind of other police officers out, but overall they don't really know where Korra is. And I think it's still a fun side of the episode, getting to see, I suppose, Lynn in action again. She obviously breaks Team Avatar out and gets Tenzin involved. So it's cool to see them all working together to kind of get Korra back. I think it's a case of, because we as the audience know that they're not on the right track, it's a difficult one to really get invested. Thankfully, when they come out of that, they use that as a way for Tarlok's, I suppose, full reveal to come out to everyone, with the council page revealing that he stayed and saw the whole thing, and that being Tarlok's ultimate downfall. That was, I think, a very well done thing, given that given the timing that they had of showing the reveal of Yukon and his powers to Korra in the past, and then having the full reveal of Tarlok come out, and you are sort of making the connections, and then Korra kind of confirms those connections to us when she sees Tarlok again. So there is a lot of really big moments in this episode that I think make it absolutely worthwhile, and I think makes it, just this second half of the season, a very strong run of episodes. It's just, as I said, I think just because of that maybe a little bit too much focus on just the, I suppose, failed, rescue of Korra early on, when they go into the kind of Equalist base, that I think maybe detracts a little bit from the episode, but it's still a good action scene. So I of course want to focus on the big events from the episode. So it's called Out of the Past because we get the visions, the kind of hallucinations that Korra has been having, and we get the full scope of them. We go into it, we actually have a full flashback. We get to see Toph talk, Aang talk, and Sokka talk, in addition to some other characters. And it's interesting because I do think they get the designs for the older ATLA cast right, and I think they get the voices quite good as well. Aang's voice, I think, works very, very nicely the way they've done it, and that here he is at 40 years old. I think that's how Aang would sound. And I like that they're continuing the idea of like they're still friends. There's still this dynamic of Toph calling him Twinkle Toes, and he doesn't really like that because he's 40, but he has to accept it because it's Toph. Sokka in a very kind of, I suppose, different position than we kind of expect of him, in that like, okay, leadership, we're used to him in leadership roles, but kind of combat leadership roles, and here he is as like the Southern Water Tribe councilman at the time, and like the head, I suppose, of the council as well, at this trial. And it's interesting to see him just be this very intelligent speaker here, and be the one to ultimately give the sentence out to Yakone at the trial. And part of, I suppose, the first part of the flashback is Toph and Aang arresting Yakone for all of these incidents. And I love the setup of this, because we know about bloodbending, and they kind of just reference it like incidents. We know what you've done. They're kind of referencing like the time of day, that there's something odd about it, but like you sort of know they're talking about bloodbending. And then at the trial, I suppose the prosecution lawyer brings it up, this outlawed ability, bloodbending. And then Yakone's defense, I suppose, brings up the details that we know of from Tarlok from the last episode of like, I think this is a mockery of justice because you're trying to convict my client of something that's impossible. Every report, and there's a lot of them, says that they were bloodbent by Yakone, but during the day, not at night time, and with no full moon. There are no reports of any of this stuff happening when there was a full moon out. What are you like trying to accuse him of bloodbending when, by its very nature, bloodbending is a rare ability, and it is specifically timed, and nothing matches the timing? But there's so many reports, there's so much evidence that he has done something like this, and I suppose the reports from the victims must have been very, very clear that they were being possessed, he was controlling them in some way, that there's only one way to interpret that, and it has to be bloodbending. And they know he's a criminal, of course, and I think Tarlok ultimately realizes that that's the problem with Yakone, is that he was always going to be targeted as a kind of known kind of crime lord basically in the city. But you see this reveal come out as he... I like Sokka's explanation of this, because it's a really cool world building moment that actually has meaning as we go into the next couple of episodes. It retroactively helps to explain some stuff from Avatar, and then serves the series and the universe going forward, that we can have some crazy bending abilities because of this reveal that some people can be born and they can have bending abilities that go beyond the scope of just being a standard earth, fire, water, airbender. He brings up the Combustion Man example, that there is a form of firebending that is very, very different than anything we've ever seen before. That clearly is an example of a personal experience for Sokka, where he encountered someone who had firebending that he's never seen before. That Toph is an example of kind of one of these special benders as well, discovering an ability. I suppose that's a slightly more technical case, because she's the first one to discover and I suppose invent the art of metal bending, but that itself is not a like rare bloodline kind of type ability. As is later revealed in like season 3, Sue seems to believe that like more or less anyone can become a metal bender if they kind of put their mind to it in the correct way. So that's interesting. But in this case, Sokka basically goes, the only way to interpret this is that Yakone is one of these unique and special benders with a rare and unique ability that only he seems to possess, and that is that he can bloodbend whenever he wants. And I suppose we later go on to get the technical term, I suppose, that they obviously must have used among the family, which is that it's psychic bloodbending as well. So, it's sort of a dual layered kind of a special ability. One of them is the time of the day thing, and then the other one is the fact that Yakone and Amon obviously are revealed to be able to bloodbend without even using their arms. Whereas Tarlok has to use his arms, which kind of puts him on a level below the other two. And once this happens, obviously he reveals his ability, Yakone, at the trial. And this is, I suppose, why Tarlok referenced it before, and why it is such an incident that there was this rogue, insanely powerful bloodbender who could bloodbend whenever he wants. And it just speaks to, look at what he does here. If there's anyone questioning the power of a psychic bloodbender, questioning the power of Amon or Yakone, watch this scene again and what Yakone is able to do, hands in handcuffs basically, just looking at people, concentrating on the room around him. He's able to, while imprisoned at his own trial, basically possess every single person in the room. A room that includes Sokka, Aang the Avatar, Toph, and all of these other people that are there. And he manages to just take control of them immediately and is not really in too much risk despite being around so many powerful benders. And even when the fight with Aang continues later on, he obviously runs away because he's trying to get away. He doesn't want to fight the Avatar because obviously we know that anything could happen in that case. But when he confronts Aang, he gains the advantage because his ability is just that much more powerful than just being a normal bender of even all of the elements. That's how powerful this thing is, that there's no clear-cut way to just defend against it, beyond just from super distance, I suppose, just completely incapacitating the bloodbender. But Aang gets caught in it, and it's only the Avatar state that breaks him out of it. And this is why I always say in my power rankings of the series that psychic bloodbending just has to by default be right at the top, basically under the Avatar state when you rank kind of abilities within this series. That look at just the evidence from this episode, but also I suppose Amon in the finale, and what else can you, what other conclusion can you come to about this ability? He's able to just completely gain the advantage over Aang as a fully realized Avatar, and only is taken out by an Avatar in the Avatar state. That speaks to just how impressive this ability is. And while, yes, if a bloodbender, I suppose, lingers on holding you in a bloodbending grip, you have the option, there's of course the option there to get out of it. But every time we've seen someone break free of a bloodbending grip, it's always been this kind of slow struggle where if the bloodbender was just a little bit more efficient, didn't try to linger over the victory, they would have had it. And I think in that case, when you're just analyzing it as a fighting technique, and you take out characters kind of giving an evil speech basically as they have you in their bloodbending grip, take that out of the picture, and it's just there's basically no ability apart from the Avatar state that can break you out of a bloodbending grip quick enough to get back into a fight. And I think for me, there's just no way to really think about any fight with a psychic bloodbender apart from, I think the only other case would be, I think, combustion benders from far range up against psychic bloodbenders could have a chance just because they're so powerful from range. And but even then, I think psychic bloodbending seems to have a big enough range where you also have to assume that Yakone and Amon are very, very powerful, just natural waterbenders as well. So they can dodge, they can do all the stuff with ice and steam and water that could get them in close enough to use their psychic bloodbending, and at that point, the fight more or less, you would assume, has to be over. So to me, that's just how heavily I rate psychic bloodbending, that it is the most powerful crazy spirit power or non-Avatar state ability that we really have seen. Obviously, as I said, combustion bending is a very powerful technique on its own, with just, I suppose, its raw ability to just destroy stuff, similarly with lava bending. But you can dodge lava bending, you can dodge combustion bending. This is just kind of it takes you over, and it's very difficult to think of anything that can do this level of kind of damage. And as I said, the scene in the courtroom is just the example of why this has to be considered such a powerful ability, and why Aang immediately feels that he has to take this guy's bending away, because this ability is just too powerful to just allow someone to continue to have this, because he's just a risk if he's allowed to keep it, because you can restrain him all you want, but he can control you with his mind and get out. And we know that, like, from even the Hama situation, and that's even just normal bloodbending, she was able to get out of a crazy Fire Nation prison using bloodbending. There's nothing that could basically contain Yakone because of the ability that he has. And so Aang's ability to take bending away is the only thing that really was able to fully take Yakone out of the picture. So it's obviously like the second time we've seen Aang take a villain's bending away, but it becomes a very powerful Avatar skill. And I like how they make this a big point. This is not just the way to take out the really powerful villain's ability. It becomes a story plot point for Amon in terms of explaining where his techniques come from, and how, in a way, the fall of his father inspires Amon to develop an ability very similar to this. So again, this comes back to, I think, the overall writing of the big plot stuff, the reveals and so on of Korra Book 1. I think it's exceptionally well written when you really get down to it. And obviously what's happening elsewhere in the episode is that obviously after they free Lin's officers, they get back to the courtroom, and Tarlok has of course explained it away that Korra came to talk to me to release her friends. We were about to have a discussion when the Equalist attacks, and I tried to defend Korra, but I got electrocuted. And I love how they show this. He's explaining this to them, but the visuals they're showing are what he actually did, and what actually happened. That he just got, basically, I suppose, captured Equalist weapons, threw them around the room, kind of messed the room up a little bit, messed his clothes up some more, electrocuted himself, and made it look like Equalist had attacked. And then, obviously, this is where the council page obviously reveals everything. And again, it's another perfect example of, here's a room filled with very, very powerful characters. Lin, Tenzin, even Saikon, I suppose you would have to assume is a powerful bender. Like Mako, Bolin, Asami, and I think there's a few other characters, immediately just knocked out with Tarlok's bloodbending. And I suppose this episode explains to us that he doesn't even have the, the second most powerful bloodbending grip in the entire series. And here he is able to take out some of our most powerful fighters in the series. That's how powerful this is, that even someone who didn't fully master the scope of the super rare ability that he had, even he is able to just immediately get himself out of this crazy situation of just being about to be attacked by basically a bunch of very powerful benders. And again, that's how powerful the technique is. And this obviously ruins him, and when he comes back to talk to Korra, this is where she kind of figures it all out. That, okay, so everyone's figured out your scheme, you're done now that everyone knows you're a bloodbender, and they're going to make the connection that you're related to Yakone. This is true, is it not, that you are Yakone's son? And this is where the reveal comes out of, yeah, I kind of used to be his son. My father failed because he tried to take over the city from the rotten underbelly. His perspective is that he's doing things the right way. He's a politician, he got into that position seemingly fairly, and is doing things, I suppose, within the law as much as possible. He's not getting any, I suppose, over excess attention apart from Korra, and he nearly had it. He nearly got away with this completely, if not for the council page, basically, more or less. That's really the only thing that really got in his way in this whole situation. If not, he potentially could have accomplished the goal that he wanted to. But I love how they transition from that of okay, basically over the last 2 episodes, Tarlok has been made into more or less, I think, an equal as a villain within the series as Amon. Because he's such a focus in these 2 episodes, and Amon actually has been missing for a few episodes, and even then hasn't been in the show all that much. He feels just as strong of a villain within the series as Amon does. But I love what they do is that just when you're okay, Tarlok is now in a position where I don't know what he's going to do next. His obvious, like, main mastermind plan has failed, but what will he do now that it has failed? And before he can even act, Amon appears before him with some of the other Equalists. And he goes to do his bloodbending thing, which we've seen has worked twice. Yukon has done it in the past. He's already done it with Tenzin and co. He takes out, like, the lieutenant and all the other chi blockers around. But Amon is just... he's only slowed down by Tarlok's bloodbending. And there comes a point where he just marches through it and is basically back up to full speed. And he has the same reaction that we do as the audience, Tarlok, to this. What are you? Like, what? How can you walk through this ability that we've just explained within this episode is basically undefeatable outside of the Avatar state? What is going on here? And I don't think you can just obviously assume Amon's a bloodbender. I think that's a stretch too far to even make at this point, even though I think some people sort of maybe called it. It's just, you can't immediately 100% for sure make those dots right now just because he walked through bloodbending. I think very much we're still in the era right now with Amon where, okay, he's been talking about spiritual stuff, so is there some element of the fact that he, like, is a spirit? We've got more technology, so the whole robot theory that was around at the time was like, it's like absurd, but like, well, I don't know, they've been doing some pretty big surprises here, and then just like, what is going on here? This is just such a powerful technique, and he walks through it and just takes out Tarlok as a villain just after Tarlok has, like, in my opinion, almost stepped up to the point where I felt like he was almost above Amon as a villain within the series, and just immediately Amon takes that all away. Tarlok is now his prisoner. And you begin to see, I suppose, some of the cracks beginning to show. Like, Amon usually wouldn't show a personal kind of care for just someone he's taken out, but he specifically takes Tarlok, puts him over his shoulders, and it's like, I'll deal with this one. You guys deal with the Avatar, electrocute her before you capture her. And we know that Amon cares about, dealing with Korra himself, but he's leaving her to his, the lieutenant and so on. And that is a little bit odd, and it speaks to, I suppose, some sort of caution that he has around Tarlok. Obviously, it'll be revealed in 2 episodes' time what exactly that is. But right now, like, it's just something that makes you go, why does... Like, he's taken him out. He's taken his bending away. There's no threat here. Why does he have to specifically deal with Tarlok going forward? And that's where the real interest, I think, comes in. But Korra obviously gets her kind of... I suppose this is her moment of development. She's kind of, through connecting with Aang and realizing that this is what Aang was trying to warn her about, that the Yukon connection links to the Tarlok thing going on right now. That's something to be cautious about. But she got that because she finally sat down and meditated and made this connection. And then she listens to what the villains say and comes up with a counter plan to avoid being electrocuted, which is like hanging from one of her wristbands in the middle of the cage so she doesn't get shocked by the outside, acting like she's been shocked, and then using that surprise to get herself out. And then I think she makes another move that maybe an earlier on in the season Korra wouldn't have made, and that is that she chooses to immediately run from Amon rather than in any way trying to tackle him. She gets away, and Naga's been, over the course of the episode, revealed to be missing as well, but she's been going after Korra the entire time, and Naga brings Korra back to the city, and we get our, I suppose, little bit of romance tension here right at the end of the fact that Mako goes right up to Korra. We have the... It's very hard to not just have some sort of romantic interpretation of the fact that he is so happy to have Korra back, holding on to her like this. Her kind of reaction of being so happy that she's been saved by Mako, and him just kind of lovingly kind of putting her down as like Asami watches this happen. It's obviously the moment that shows you that, like, it's hard to, I think, just be kind of super harsh on Mako, because here's his friend who's been kidnapped, and he cares about her. We know that. He said that earlier on in the season. He wants to get her back, of course. But he has, I suppose, in doing this, sort of forgotten about Asami. But I don't think you can immediately just yet jump to the conclusion of, like, he doesn't care about Asami anymore. It's just that Korra is the one in direct threat. Asami's right there. His focus is elsewhere. We'll see where it goes in that. I think by the end of the series, this is what we're meant to interpret as his reaction to this shows him that he liked Korra better overall, or had a deeper connection to Korra than he did with Asami, and that relationship was like a more meaningful one to him. Obviously we'll discuss in the upcoming episodes where they went with that, the flaws of it, and the mistakes they made with the romance arcs. But right now this is just like, okay, you know, they're going to deal with this the drama at some point. But this was actually a quite well done scene of just, of course, you know, give her some space. She's just back from being kidnapped. Let's, you know, just be gentle with her for now. And just, you end this episode again in this situation of like, okay, Korra's back. She's not really injured. She's gained this understanding and is now obviously going to reveal to everyone that, okay, if you haven't figured it out already, Tarlok's Yakon's son. This is the connection that's going on here. But Amon is a huge, huge threat. Because Amon just took out the Yakon 2.0. And the only person who was able to take out a Yakon was Aang, because he was in the Avatar state, and Korra doesn't have the Avatar state. So she is just as, you know, she can suffer from bloodbending just as much as everyone else. So, you know, that's the situation that we're in right now. And I think it's an excellent ending to this, because, as I said, you're almost like lowering in your expectations how powerful Amon is because of what they've done with Tarlok in the last 2 episodes. And then the writers just come in and are like, oh yeah, you forgot about Amon? Well, look at this. Now who do you think is the more powerful one? Yeah, Amon. And that's brilliant with what they do. And then later on the reveal, of course, that why Amon felt the need to take Tarlok out was because Amon, of course, was the one who knew that Tarlok was his brother. It wasn't known the reverse way around until Tarlok basically says that. Right up until he bloodbent me, I didn't really know that it was him. So that's a cool reveal as well. As for I suppose the earlier sections of the episode, the Lin getting her officers back, it was nice because when she actually finds them, I like that it is a little bit of an emotional moment. She kind of sees this as a failure for her, that she hasn't got there in time, their bending's already been taken. And you can see that it's sort of broken them in a way, that their bending means so much to them. And it means a lot to her as well, that this is her metal bender cops and now they don't have metal bending anymore. It kind of gives her even more of a reason to fight, because her failures sort of led to them losing their bending. She's going to do everything she can to make this happen. There are, of course, some cool action scenes. I like that, like, Bolin and like Lin sort of team up while they're on the kind of underground cart thing, and they go flying up through the different kind of sections. That's quite cool. You have the like references that like Mike and Brian do the voice acting on 2 of the random Equalist members while they're in the kind of underground base. Other than that, it's just like that section of the episode is just solid. But the backstory part of the episode, the like Korra and Tarlok stuff, the Amon and Tarlok stuff, that's where this episode really shines. So yeah, that's more or less all I wanted to say about this one. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on K109 Out of the Past. But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.